So we are recording the session as well. So hello and welcome. My name is Khadija Izakana. I'm here with Martin Avisco as well, and we are project managers at SOS UK. So it would be great if you could keep muted if you are here today as well. So we will be recording this session, and we're attempting to live stream, but we'll see if that is working. And yeah, just if your name is displaying as a username, please can you change that so we can see who's here. And yeah, make use of the chat box as well if you'd like to ask any questions or give any comments to what we're going through today. And yeah, it'd be great if you could introduce yourselves as well, just to see who's here and where you're from as well. So that would be great. So moving on to the next part.
And just to let you know as well that this session will be available afterwards on YouTube.
Yes. And yeah, just to go through the contents of the webinar. So we'll be going through an introduction to SOS UK, and we'll be going through living halls and what that will consist of. We'll be going through what to do as you move in, and also what to do once you're living there. So as I previously mentioned, this webinar forms part of the Student Switch Off webinar series, and the content is also linked to our Home Fit for Study campaign. So we'll be discussing that in a lot more detail later on in the webinar as well. So just to give an introduction to SOS UK and who we are. So we are an educational charity, and we were created in 2019 in response to the climate emergency and ecological crisis. And we form part of the NUS family, and you know, they have been at the forefront of social change since the early 1920s. So we are working to move sustainability from being these subjects that relatively few study to something that all students learn about. We strongly believe that all students should be sustainability students. And we aim to create cohort after cohort of positive solutions-driven students, go on to make the world a more sustainable place. And we also want to shift society from obsession with short-term profits to long-term benefit. And we have three main aims in order to do those. And that is by getting more students leading on and learning about sustainability. We aim to embed sustainability in formal education, right through from early years to adult learning. And we also aim to make sustainability more inclusive for everyone. So the next section is about leaving halls. So as we all know, leaving halls is quite a chaotic time. And in this section, we'll be just quickly running through how you can leave your halls in the most sustainable way. So the first section is about all the stuff that we have. So we all somehow managed to accumulate a vast amount of clothes, items, and admittedly a lot of random things whilst we're at university. So when leaving, there are certain actions that you can take to reduce how much actually ends up in landfill. So if you can't take all your things with you or keep them in storage, donate or sell them instead of throwing them away. So many universities and students' unions as well have end-of-year donation schemes. And also a lot of councils have collections as well that they organise. So if the item is in bad enough condition that it's not okay to pass on, then make sure you recycle it if possible as well. So we just also wanted to kind of say about talking to your housemates. So having a conversation with them about what you might be willing to share when private renting as well. So for example, in the kitchen, you could decide on who is bringing what for communal use. So if one person can bring a kettle, one person can bring a toaster, for example. And this way you'll avoid pointlessly buying things that someone already has and having too many of one thing as well. And the next section is about bills. So this is quite a touchy subject for some people, but this is something that really needs to be considered before leaving your halls of residence and moving into the private rented sector. So bills are of course inevitable, and they are more likely to be separate rather than all together, as they typically are when you're in halls. So again, we advise to have a conversation with your new housemates about how you'll go about splitting those bills. And this will save you a lot of stress and unwanted debts in the future as well. So firstly, consider who will be the main person responsible for the bills and how will you manage that? Will you transfer the money to that person or after the bill has come out of their account? And then the second point is to consider how much you are all willing to spend or can afford on bills per month as well. So that's a really important point to consider. And also just consider setting up a joint account just for bills. There's different websites that you can use, but definitely bear in mind any extra costs that we would ask for that. And also consider splitting payments for items that you might use communally as well. So cooking oil and cleaning products, and that will save a lot of money in the long run as well. So I'm going to pass over to Marta now, who will be going through the rest of the webinar and discussing what to do as you move in and once you're living there as well.
Thank you, Khadija. Just to quickly mention as well, in terms of bills and sharing bills, do bear in mind that having your name on a bill, like a water bill or an energy bill, does affect your credit rating in the future. So that's something worth remembering, and worth really having a lot of trust in your housemates if you're sharing an account with them for that in particular. But I will be going into more detail about that and the advice that we can provide to you for managing bills later on. Great, so the next section of the webinar is about how to manage moving into your new home in a sustainable way. I know it's very exciting to be able to get settled in your new place. That you can decorate with your own stuff a bit more than the university flat. And here are some key things that you should do as you move in before putting up all of your fairy lights that are really important to make sure that you protect yourself, protect your deposit, and all of the money that you're putting into living in that home. So starting with meter readings, this is the very first thing that you need to do as you arrive to move in, because you don't want to be paying someone else's energy bill. So essentially what this means is you go and look at the energy meters, at the gas and electricity meters. Best to take the numbers down, take a photo of the meter and submit them to the energy supplier that's currently supplying the property. You won't have to have set up an account with an energy company before you move in. There's no chance that you will ever be cut off electricity, as that's just how it functions in terms of the energy market. So the previous supplier will keep supplying the property unless the bills are not being paid regularly, or unless there's a switch in terms of who supplies the property. But there's no chance that once you move in there isn't energy at your home, so someone has to be paying for it. So make sure that you're only paying for the energy that you use from the moment you move into the house, rather than what might have been used before by people who lived in your house before. So yeah, submit the readings to the supplier of the day that you move in, and after you've taken the readings, if you'd like to switch suppliers, you can do that. Currently the advice is not to switch, because the energy market is very unstable and very volatile at the moment, but the situation may change in the future. So that's something worth remembering, particularly because when the energy market is a bit more stable, there's a lot of different offers that pop up from different suppliers that can mean that you pay less for your energy bill overall. We recommend paying your bills directly just because it gives you a bit more control. It does make you feel a bit more adult as well. It's a good thing to learn once you move out of holes, because sooner or later you will have to deal with bills. So if you are paying your bills directly in your private rented house, we recommend that you get a smart meter. This way you will ensure that your bills are always accurate instead of estimated for your property. So we will only pay for what you actually use, not for what the energy supplier thinks you might be using. And you won't have to take regular readings, as a smart meter will do it for you. This is very convenient and very helpful. It's something that made my life a lot easier when I got a smart meter for my home, just because my meters, for instance, are in the basement and it's really annoying to get in there. It has a trap door, it's dark, and it's miserable. So having a smart meter do that for me and send them the readings to my supplier without me really getting involved is very, very helpful and very convenient. So if you are paying your bills directly, you can just get in touch with a supplier to get a smart meter installed. They will arrange an installation date for you. If you are not paying your bills directly, this is something that you would have to talk to your landlord or your lettings agency about. because essentially the responsibility for having or not having a smart meter installed sits with the person whose name is on the bill. So if your name or one of your housemates' name is on the bill, then you can make that decision yourself. The next thing to do, again, on the very first day, ideally, that you arrive, is doing the inventory. So the inventory basically means that you walk around the house, make sure that everything's okay. If there are any faults, any issues, something's missing, you take notice of that as and when you move in, and you let your lettings agency or your landlord know as soon as you notice, so that none of the issues are then basically pushed onto you in terms of responsibility, and you don't have to pay for anything from your deposit once the time comes to leave their house. So your lettings agency may provide you with an inventory document already, which is very helpful, but it's still really important to make sure that you go through that document, go through everything that's in there, and make sure that everything that is in there is actually correct, and that nothing is reported to be in a better condition than it actually is. So if something doesn't match the inventory, make sure that you let your agency know in writing. It's very important to do this in writing. You can report issues and talk about them over the phone or in person, but it's really important to make sure that everything actually gets sent in writing and that you have evidence of that. So make sure that you take photos and just update the inventory that way with your lettings agents. And I've already mentioned photos. Make sure to take photos of any issues around the house when you first arrive. So things to check that we're highlighting are all walls and flooring. So look around the skirting boards, look around all of the corners, if there's anything, any paint, any stains on the walls, anything that's not quite sticking, if there are any stains or holes in the furniture, or any parts that are not falling out. Particularly if you happen to have a bed frame, a wooden bed frame, make sure that all of the slates underneath the mattress are okay. And then make sure to look at all of the seals around the showers or sinks in bathrooms and in the kitchens, windows and doors. This is important both for your health and safety in terms of not having any mold develop in those areas, but also preventing drafts. But that's something I'll touch upon a bit later on. And also make sure to check that any shelves that you have for your use won't fall off if you put something on them or break, that they are rigid and they can actually support the stuff that you'll be putting on them. And as previously mentioned, it is important to have evidence to back up any claims that you make later on. So yeah, make sure to take all photos of everything that you can see that isn't quite in the working order, and especially if it doesn't match what the inventory document is saying. It's really, really important to highlight this because it protects you and your deposit. And some further additional points as you're moving in, some other things that are really important to remember is to respond to any mail that you get from the council, especially if the council has someone else's details as living in the property. This is actually a legal requirement. So if your council doesn't have up-to-date information in terms of who's occupying the house, and you are not responding to their requests for information, you can be held legally responsible for that. So it's very easy to avoid. The council usually posts a letter within a month or two of someone moving into the house. You get a document which is essentially like a big checklist of who's living in the house, their details, so like the email address, the date of birth. So this generally, if you're moving into a student house, this will generally, when you get that document, it will include people who used to be tenants before you moved in. But it's very easy to rectify that because you can either fill out a form that you get sent in post and then post it back to the council, or what my council does as well is alongside that document, they send me an access link, so I can just go onto a specific website on the council's website and update the form online automatically. Just delete the people that don't live in the house anymore and update it that way. It takes 5 minutes. It's something that's really important to do because it is a legal requirement. So yeah, just make sure that you're not ignoring an email from the council. This is also important for getting on the electoral register, as this way you can vote in local elections, which is very, very important in terms of having a say also around sustainability issues within the area that you're living in. So again, this letter will come by post from the council, and you should just be able to update your details online. That shouldn't be difficult. It's important to remember that as students, if you have a term time address and a home address, you are able to vote in local elections in both areas. So make sure to register at your student house as well. And if there are any items or appliances that you think would be useful to have that the house doesn't have, because for instance it doesn't come with a kettle or a toaster, and you'd like to have one, it's a good idea to get the items secondhand. They're usually very cheap in charity shops. The charity shops in the UK always have lots of different things, especially for the kitchen, that are very cheap and in very good condition. So in terms of sustainability, it's always better to prolong the life of something that's already there rather than contribute to the demand for new items. Okay, and some advice, sustainability advice for living in your next home sustainably for the next year. First thing to do is to make sure that you understand how your waste management system works in the local council. Some universities have specific personal waste management systems that are different to the ones that are used in the local council area. This was the case for me, and moving into my second year house was very confusing in terms of suddenly having very limited recycling facilities. So it is particularly true for mixed recycling. Sometimes the items are just different between the different companies that provide waste management. And it's really important to recycle correctly for the system your area is covered by to avoid recycling contamination. Aspirational recycling, unfortunately, does more harm than good and can result in correctly segregated waste to go into landfill. So aspirational recycling is basically what happens when you feel like something should be recyclable. So you throw it in the recycling bin under the assumption that if it's not, someone sorting through recycling at the materials recovery facility will just take it out and make sure that it ends up in the correct stream. But unfortunately, that is not what happens for the most part. Practices do differ between different areas and different cities, but more often than not, if you perform aspirational recycling, replacing something in your recycling bin that isn't recyclable in that local area system, it will basically cause the whole load to be thrown out. So yeah, better to avoid it, better to be safe than sorry. And I know it's very frustrating when you can't recycle something that you know should be easily recyclable, or like that says, for example, on the plastic tray that it's recyclable, but it's not recycled at your curbside at your home. It is very frustrating, but it's really important not to contaminate the recycling that can be segregated and processed within your local area. Another tip to avoiding recycling contamination, other than following the local rules, is to rinse all of your plastic, glass and metal containers before you put them in the bin. Especially important for getting rid of any food leftovers. Also pizza boxes, make sure that there's no pizza or sauce in your pizza boxes when you put them into your paper recycling, because especially paper can very easily be spoiled by contamination of leftovers of the food. Next is to report issues that appear in your house as soon as you can. So when you rent privately, your landlord is responsible for most major repairs to your home, and that includes the structure of the property, so any walls, roof, windows and doors. It includes sinks, baths and toilets, any piping and wiring, heating and hot water systems. So if something happens to the boiler, that's on the landlord or the letting agent to sort out. The safety of gas and electrical appliances that your landlord has provided, so that come with the house. All of the appliances that come with the house should have an up-to-date electrical safety sticker on them. And if there isn't one, make sure to get in touch with your landlord and to arrange for an inspection to make sure that you are safe in your home. And a couple more things that landlords are responsible for are making sure that your home is fit for human habitation. So that's a legal thing in terms of the structure of the property, whether you don't have damp or pests that are damaging your health and stuff like that. And anything else that's included in contract or provided with the house. So for example, any furniture, any mattresses and stuff like that. But unfortunately, until your landlord or your letting agency gets officially notified about the problem, they don't really have to do anything about it because they don't live in the house with you at the end of the day. So unless you tell them, they don't know that something's wrong. It's important to remember that unfortunately problems could get worse over time. So it's best to report them as soon as you notice them because it will save you getting frustrated over something not being repaired for a long time. And it will also save on the cost of replacing it potentially. Worth remembering that sometimes it's easier or more convenient, or you're more likely to get a response when you request repairs over the phone or in person visiting your letting agency. But again, it's always really important to make sure that you follow it up in writing. So follow up what you agreed on your during your conversation, and just send that email and keep a copy of that email available to you. If your landlord isn't carrying out the repairs or the property is unsafe to live in for whatever reason, you can contact the environmental health department of your local council. They can come in for an inspection and essentially order your landlord to do repairs. Obviously, ideally, they wouldn't ever get to this stage because your landlord would just respond to the repairs requests. But this is a route that you can take, so it's worth remembering that there are options if you're having issues with the provider of your accommodation. The next point is about getting to know your heating system and using it well and effectively. So it's always good to find out, ideally before the heating season starts, so you don't have to start figuring all of this out when you're already cold at home. So where your thermostat or boiler is and how to set them, including if they have any timers and how to work those timers. If the house doesn't have a manual for your boiler, you can look up the boiler model online and familiarize yourself with how to work your heating system that way. Hopefully ahead of the cold season again. And this is also helpful when it comes to finding out about any potential faults in the system. So if any radiators have air bubbles in them and they're not heating up properly, it's best to find out about this before you actually rely on the radiators to keep you warm at home. So even if you don't need the heating on in the summer, which hopefully no one will in this country, it's just good to work out how the heating system works before you actually rely on it. Next is to set the thermostat between 18 and 21 degrees. The best temperature for rooms in your home varies between rooms, but generally sits between 18 and 21 or 22 degrees. 18 is best for bedrooms, 21 best for living rooms or office spaces, kind of spaces where you happen to work, not just for sleep. So it's best to set the thermostat at your home to a temperature that falls within these boundaries. And every degree warmer than this can increase your energy usage and your bills by 10%. So it is quite a lot, especially if it's way higher than this temperature. Also worth remembering that turning the thermostat up won't heat your house up faster. That's not how it works. Your heating system will still be heating up at the same speed. It will just basically work for longer and it will cost you more to heat the house or to aspirationally heat the house to a much higher temperature in, for example, the high 20s degrees of Celsius. So avoid this. It's not about the thermostat. It's just about the heating being on in terms of heating your house. And also don't keep the heating on 24/7. It does not make any sense. It's best to program it and to switch off when you're out of the house. So if you are at university or at work, if you don't happen to do university work from home, or if you're tucked up in bed, don't have the heating on because you are not using that heat. So this is just pointless heating up the air that you don't need to have heated. And if you're out of the house, you can set it so that the heating comes back on about half an hour before you get home, or before you get up if that's at night. So this way you'll keep it warm when it needs to be and won't pay for the heat that you are not using. Next, we have some energy saving tips. So the first one is to use your curtains effectively to keep the heat in. So open them in the morning, let the sun in during the day or when the outside is warmer than the inside of your home, and then close them when it gets dark. And this way you will create an additional layer of insulating air between the windows and the inside of your home. So your home won't get cold quite as quickly. Next one is to make sure that you keep your home well ventilated, as this will help you avoid damp issues, which is particularly a problem for a lot of poorly insulated properties, which sadly a lot of the UK housing is. And this is not just the property of student housing either, just generally UK housing is quite draughty. So make sure that you put lids on your pots and pans when you're cooking. An additional tip is that this will also make the water boil more quickly, so make sure that you do that. Use the extractor fans or open the windows a little bit during and after showering or cooking to get rid of that excess moisture from the air. As moist air is a lot harder to heat than dry, it will cost you more and it will take longer for your house to reach a comfortable temperature. Next, to draft proof your home where it's possible. So as I've mentioned before, check the sealant around windows and doors for any gaps. And if there are gaps, make sure to get in touch with your landlord or your lettings agency to replace that sealant. You can also request installation of draft proofing solutions to doors and windows. So these are things like letterbox draft excluders or keyhole covers if you have a big keyhole that lets the draft in. And good to use draft snakes as well if there are gaps, especially below your main doors. Wash clothes at lower temperatures. This is something that has changed a lot over the past kind of decade, 15 years. The chemicals that we use for clothes washing are a lot more effective now than they used to be when you're washing your clothes at 30 degrees or 40 degrees. And they wash them just as well. So they're clean, they don't smell, and it saves up a lot of energy because heating up the water, it takes up a lot of energy. So if you don't have to do that, if your boiler doesn't have to do that, it will be cheaper. And the classic tip is about turning all of the appliances and lights off when you're not using them. Using your appliances effectively, so make sure that you don't overfill the kettle if you're not going to use all of that water straight away. And if you need to purchase any appliances, as we mentioned, best to purchase them secondhand, but it's also worth looking at the energy efficiency ratings of those appliances. We have more energy tips for renters on our website, so Khadijah's just posted a link and we will be including that in the resources description when we share the webinar on our YouTube channel. We also had a webinar called How to Keep Warm in Winter, and that's also available on our YouTube channel. That will also have a link to if you'd like to have a look at more of these energy tips, particularly in the context of winter. Over the next couple of months, we will be sharing guides on our website for renters around different topics surrounding energy efficiency. The one that's coming the soonest will focus on managing bills in a shared house. So make sure that you sign up to our newsletter so that you don't miss them. And we will be sharing information about them on our social media as well. And the final point, just to reinforce in this webinar, is to make sure that you enjoy your home in peace and know about the other rights that you have. So it's very important you have the right to live in your home without being disturbed by your landlord or anyone acting on their behalf. This includes lettings agents and any contractors coming to do inspections or repairs as well. And it's called the right of quiet enjoyment. So you must get at least 24 hours notice if someone is to access your property, and no one can enter your home without your permission, and just randomly. They must always have a good reason. So if for whatever reason you don't think they should be coming in, or if it's not convenient for you, if you're not at home, you should be somewhere else at the time, no one can enter your home without your permission. And this includes viewings for prospective tenants as well. And the only exception to this is when there is an emergency, and you can't just, your landlord or your letting agent, they can't just say that something's an emergency. It has to be a genuine emergency. So if there's a fire or a burst pipe, something that needs attention as soon as possible, that's the only exception to when someone can come to your home unannounced or within less than 24 hours of letting you know that they're coming. Many tenants don't know about this right and about all the other rights that they have when renting privately. So as part of this Student Switch Off Week of Action, we have created a 5-minute masterclass that introduces you to your rights as a tenant. So it includes this right to quiet enjoyment and other things to do with repair and information accessible to you about your renting. So again, we'll be posting a link to the masterclass in the webinar's description, and a link to our newsletter as well, so you can sign up so you know about any relevant things that we do and any resources that we share. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. Make sure that you keep in touch. If there are any questions that you'd like to ask us or you need any advice, feel free to email us at hello@sosuk.org. Visit our website for more resources, and make sure to follow us on social media for more tips, and so that you know when we share new things. Hope you have a great day.